Like tens of millions of Americans, last week we packed up the car and we drove to be with family for Thanksgiving. The traffic on 45 was horrendous. The parking lot at Buc-ee's was a nightmare. Why do we do this to ourselves? What do we get at the end of it? A slice of turkey and a pile of mashed potatoes. What a letdown. No, of course not. We fought the traffic. We waited in line at the gas station. We ate our turkey to be with people we care about. And gathered at my in-laws' house with our family, we told stories. We talked about what had happened in our lives since the last Thanksgiving. We talked about all those old Longhorns and Aggies games that we had watched in the past. Hook 'em. We told stories. We told stories about family members who have since gone on. We told stories about people we miss. Yes, we even told some of the unpleasant stories. Stories that some of us in our family would rather forget. Stories are what sustain human communities. Think of it in our most primeval form. Humans gathered around campfires and in caves to tell stories to one another. It's why we still read novels. It's why science fiction is still a thing. It's why we watch sitcoms and go to the movies. Humans tell stories. Even in this world of technology and data, we read our children bedtime stories. To open their imagination, we don't read them science textbooks, though that would surely put them to sleep. We read things like The Very Hungry Caterpillar and Harry Potter. To teach our children right from wrong, we don't read them law books. We tell them fairy tales and legends. And to help our children take their place at the Thanksgiving table, we make sure that our children know the family stories. Because stories shape our imagination and stories keep us together. And really, that's why we have a Bible. It's for story. It keeps us together. In the most basic sense, the Bible is a collection of stories. Stories about God's relationship with humans over the course of thousands of years. The Bible is not a textbook. It's better than that. It's stories. Some of them are beautiful, yes, and you love telling them over and over again like your favorite family stories. Some of the Bible stories are hard and difficult to swallow, like some of your family stories. I learned this all over again last week. See, every year before the first Sunday of Advent, that's today, I sit down and I read through the entire gospel that we'll be reading in the next year. This church year, starting today, we'll be reading through the Gospel of Luke all the way until the next December. So this is my spiritual practice. One day a year, I make a pot of coffee, I get my Bible, and I read through the entire gospel in one sitting. And it struck me that the Gospel of Luke, more than others, is a collection of stories. Different parts of the gospel will begin with sayings like, on one occasion, or once, or on a Sabbath, or on another Sabbath. It's like how your family stories start. Do you remember that one time on vacation when? Or I think it was last Thanksgiving that we? Or I can't believe this is the first year without. It's like the Gospel of Luke has gathered us, the church, around the Thanksgiving table and is telling us these stories. Stories of Jesus healing people and helping them. Jesus bringing good news to the poor. Stories of people asking for forgiveness. It's only in Luke that we hear the story of Jesus being born in a manger. It's only in Luke that Jesus tells us that great story about a father and his son who wasted all his inheritance. And look around at the windows in this church. They're all from Luke. There's Jesus being born in the Gospel of Luke. There's the boy Jesus in the Gospel of Luke at the temple. There's baby Jesus with Mary and Joseph in the temple. And there's Luke way back there. These stories are the spiritual imagination of this parish. We read them, we hear them, and we see them. And these stories, they sustain our community. See, when we talk about restoring this old church building, I don't want to talk about dollars and budgets and windows. I want to talk about that story, that time when Jesus sat down in a synagogue building and talked to his friends. When we're trying to get enough toys together for the families of St. Vincent's house, I don't want to talk about wrapping gifts and gathering presents. I want to talk about that time that Jesus sat down and fed 5,000 people with just a few loaves of bread. I don't want to talk about the number of kids we have in youth group or at Sunday school. I want to talk about that time up here in this window when Jesus called the children together and blessed them. These stories, they aren't just old fables that we read on Sunday morning. No, these stories give us purpose. And we keep telling and retelling the old stories because they mean something to us. Even that odd story that I read about staying alert, about hard times ahead, about heaven and earth passing away. I know we want to say that it's just some old story, but it must have a purpose because Luke decided to write it down. We keep them around because it's important. Just like your uncomfortable family stories. Now, think if you were one of those early Christians being persecuted and thrown to the lions and being mocked for your faith, you can imagine how those words, that story, would have helped inspire you. So we keep reading them, even the hard ones, because they sustain us. And I want you to know these stories too. So this morning, on this first Sunday of Advent, as we begin a new church year, I have a challenge for you. I'm asking you to read the Gospel of Luke. Get to know the stories of our faith. Get to know them better than you already do. If you've read it before or if you've never read it, read Luke. And I know you are busy people. This is not just one more thing to add to your to-do list. You can get it as an audiobook. Listen to it while you do the dishes, while you fold laundry, while you're driving to work. You can even find a version where James Earl Jones reads you the Bible. That's awesome. So just as you pass on these family stories, the church is trying to pass on the stories of our faith. So take the time and listen to them and read them. And I'm making this deal with you now. If you read through Luke before Ash Wednesday next year, that's March 5th. You call me up, we'll have coffee, and we'll talk about it. I want to hear what you learned, and I want to learn about the stories that are shaping you. I'm giving you 3 months. I did it in one day, and I promise you I'm not that smart. So today, the first Sunday of Advent, this marks the beginning of our look to Christmas. And as all the other bits of Christmas will be competing for your time and your money and your attention, the shopping and the decorating and the endless parties, take the time to remember and to reconnect and to hear again these old stories. Amen.